Forgotten Archetypes. Yugioh. First introduced in the set Generation 4 with the card Yugioh, then following further support in the set Return of the Duelist. This archetype focused on level 3 and 4 Earth Machine monsters that would either perform effects when flip face up, and would also focus on Exceed summoning mainly into rank 4 monsters and some rank 3s as well. This deck was flexible back in the day, being able to blend in with tons of other archetypes such as Machina, Karakuri, and even the gadget monsters as well, as the machines could easily be searched with Yugioh's main monster, Gigan X, to search for any level 4 lower machine type monster from deck or grave. The archetype even had a structure deck released afterwards called Yugioh Rampage that provided some extra support for the archetype, but came out a while after the competitive scene evolved into other competitive decks. The best cards for the archetype were Yugioh Armor, Yugioh Accelerator, Yugioh Augur, and the trap card Yugioh Gear. What are your thoughts on the archetype, and what support should it receive to re-enter the competitive scene today?
Forgotten Archetypes. Is that how it goes? Did I do it right? This is a Forgotten Archetypes video. The archetype we're talking about today is Abyss. Yes, Abyss. Completely different from Burning Abyss. I'd never forget you, Dante. Did you know that mermaids are a part of the Abyss archetype? Yep, the word's right there. The archetype first started as a couple of monsters with the name Abyss in them, like Abyss Soldier, but the archetype's main wave of support came out later in Abyss Rising. Wave. Enter the Mermails. These 100% sea beefcakes became a huge meta contender with their ability to special summon and search their boss monsters, pop cards with their Atlantean support, as well as their OTK potential. As the meta progressed, Mermails faded into the depths of Rogue, until Breakers of Shadow was released and introduced Neptibus, the Atlantean prince. This sea messiah was summonable by Deep Sea Diva and 1-for-1, and gave the deck easy access to Dragoon searches and Moving Glacia setups. The archetype might be forgotten when it comes to today's format, but it still swims in the hearts of many to this day. Thank you for watching.
Forgotten Archetypes. Dino Wrestlers. Dino Wrestlers is an archetype introduced to the TCG first in the set Soul Fusion. Although the archetype has seen support in Dark Neostorm, Rising Rampage, Chaos Impact, and even as late as Dawn Majesty in 2021, the archetype never saw any real competitive meta play. The only card to see any play within this archetype is Dino Wrestler Pancratops. The archetype mostly composes of different dinosaurs and different wrestling styles or martial arts styles. It is an archetype that likes to revolve in controlling the battle phase and controlling the board state as a stall strategy, with their extra deck monsters that like to stop spell and trap cards from activating until the end of the damage step. What do you think the deck needs for it to be more meta relevant or to see any play in the tables?
Forgotten Archetypes. The Entity Archetype. The Entity Archetype is based off of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. With the release of the 2015 Megatons, we received Elder Entity Norden and Old Entity Hastor. In 2016, with Breakers of Shadow, we received our first trap support in Forbidden Apocrypha. Elder Entity Entis and Dreamland were released in the 2017 Megatons. With the release of Shadows in Valhalla, we also received the rest of the support in Outer Entity Azathoth, Outer Entity Nyarla, Old Entity Cthulhu, and Forbidden Trapezohedron. The only cards to see major meta play have been Elder Entity Norden, which got banned in 2017, and Outer Entity Azathoth that got banned in January 2020. What do you think the archetype needs to see meta relevancy, or should the cards become unbanned so we could see more entity deck lists out?
What is up, everybody? It's your boy Lucky from Stackz Gaming, making a quick short video in regards towards our Forgotten series. Just recently, 2 sets have been announced to get support. One we didn't get a chance to make a video on, which is the Battle Boxers. That was going to be covered by our very own Teddy, one of his favorite archetypes of all time. And the recently aforementioned support for Volcanics, which makes us actually very happy, because we did make a Forgotten archetype video for the Volcanics with the hopes that it would get support. And surely enough, Konami did not fail to impress us. We are still very happy. Go ahead and check out the rest of our Forgotten archetype videos, and we'll get back to you with some more love. Peace. Forgotten archetype. Malus Severus. Malus Vorus. I don't know. First released in the set, Shadow Specters. This archetype was the original archetype that focused on rank 2 XYZ monster summoning. Or at least was supposed to be. Used by number 96 in the series, but despite that, this archetype never saw support for its art. This archetype is based on kitchen Tupperware, but as you see already know, no support at all. If this archetype did receive support, we are sure it would be extremely flexible in games because it has a minor potential to spam a board similar to the Frog archetype and Sprite archetypes for its time, as Dark and Light attributes are the most supported in the game. How should this archetype get support to enter today's meta, and thoughts on it? Forgotten archetype, Gishki. First released in the set, Generation Force. This archetype was once used back in 2012-13 when they had the FTK known of course as Gishki FTK, and some used after involving the Gishki hand loop. This archetype would use generic effect monsters to add cards from deck/graveyard to the hand, allow for the full cost of Gishki ritual summons, and thanks to the archetype being water, this archetype would synergize with an immense amount of support back in the day with cards like Morio Greed, Salvage, and Surface. Some of the Gishki ritual cards could even be recycled from the graveyard, returning other cards back to the deck to be used again. The ritual monster cards tend to have some of the same levels, though they varied. Cards such as Gishki Goosekraken and Mind August were the best of the archetype, and it would even be hit on the ban list to prevent the Gishki hand loop and FTK. Other mentions for potential FTK would involve 2 copies of Gishki Zeo Gigas to hit for high damage and end the game with Gustav Max. Recently, this archetype did receive support in the Photon Hypernova, but the archetype is still rendered weak to the current meta nowadays. What are your thoughts on the archetype?
Forgotten archetype, Hands. The first hand card to come out into the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG game was number 106, Giant Hand. It first appeared as a YCS promo, and then got a reprint in Infinite Gold series. The deck became an archetype when Dragons of Legends set first came out, and it came out with the support, including Fire Hand, Ice Hand, which are the more remembered hands. We also got Prominence Hand and Magic Hand, as well as C number 106 Giant Red Hand. Later in the set, Rise of the Duelist, we received the last support in Thunder Hand. The only cards to be remembered from the archetype were Fire and Ice Hand, as they were used in a lot of different deck variants, including Hat and Cat. What do you think of this small archetype? Do you think it should get support?
Forgotten archetypes, Guardians. Guardians is an archetype that revolves around summoning creatures that have the appropriate equipped spells already on the field. Guardians were first introduced in Dark Crisis and have been reprinted, but haven't had much support. They were used in the anime by Raphael, one of the few characters to be able to beat a 10 in an actual duel. The archetype consists of Baal, Sail, Dreadscythe, Iados, Elma, Growl, Chaos, and Trice. They all have their corresponding equip spells. The only one to be able to be summoned without having the equip spell on the field is Iados. Butterfly Dagger Elma is currently banned due to it having a lot of loops in the game. The archetype also has one support card that is not named Guardian in the form of Arsenal Summoner. What do you think the archetype needs in order for it to become meta relevant?
Forgotten archetype, Fabled. First released in the set, Duelist Revolution. The Fabled archetype was a series of light fiend monsters who would gain effects when the monsters were discarded in a way, whether through cost or through an effect. Almost similar to the Dark World archetype, but with easier to meet conditions. Best card for the archetype was Fabled Raven, who was used back in the day shortly after the Dark Worlds got their first structure deck, as Raven was in the deck to be used for synchros and discard effect plays. With this, other cards were useful back then, such as Fabled Unicorn, Fabled Kudabi, and the seldom used Fabled Rajin. There was a time about a decade ago where the Fabled archetype had a triple Quasar Synchro deck, but even with this, the archetype never saw competitive play. Fun fact, Obedience School was a spell that came out and featured some of the Fabled mini monsters, but not a generic spell for the archetype. What are your thoughts on the archetype, and what should it get to enter competitive play?
Forgotten archetype, Iron Chain. Iron Chain first appeared in the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D series and was used by Mr. Armstrong. It came out in its entirety in the set Crossroads of Chaos. The deck likes to use the advantage of milling the opponent's deck, manipulating monsters' attack and defense, with also inflicting minor burn. The card has one spell card in the name of Poison Chain, which is a continuous spell card. The rest of the cards in the set and the archetype are
Iron Chain Blaster, Iron Chain Coil, Iron Chain Dragon, Iron Chain Repairman, and Iron Chain Snake. What do you think the archetype means to be meta relevant, or do you think the archetype should get support so it could see some meta relevancy?